So how did it go?
Do you know what? Beyond our wildest expectations, which I very rarely am fully happy with anything.
Okay.
This is the first time coming out of this where I'm like, I'm actually really happy and proud.
Okay.
And I don't think I've ever felt like that with the first three.
For this episode of Energy Untold, it was great to have Graeme Edge back. Energy Disruptors just happened last week, so we thought it'd be a good opportunity to sit down and just talk through this year's event and what we can expect from the conference going forward. I hope you enjoy this conversation with Graeme. Well, I'm glad we could sit down because you're so busy. The only way to see you now is to book social media.
I'm getting a lot of heat from Michelle on social media because I've become a little bit addicted. So I've never.
Oh no!
I never normally have the apps or anything, but this time I downloaded LinkedIn and I can't keep off it, which is bad. So I'm gonna delete it in the next week, I think.
Delete it?
Yeah. I delete all my. I've got like 10 apps on my phone. I'm really strange about. I don't even have a browser on my phone, so I have to manually type in. I try and make my life as difficult as possible on my phone.
On the phone, okay.
Yeah.
Whose idea was it to do all these, all the preamble videos ahead of Energy Disruptors this year? Was it your idea?
I'm going to try and take credit, but I'm sure it was Michelle would have suggested.
Okay. And so how many videos did you actually record?
I fell slightly short of my target. I think I did 28.
Okay.
I missed the last 2 days, the Sunday, Monday.
Yeah.
Because I was fucking broken. I was so sick. And I got to the point where I was like, oh, I can't do anymore.
Yeah.
And it was quite funny because quite a few people have asked me what was my strategy. And I started off pretty cocky. So I said to Michelle, this is going to be easy. I've already done 6 videos. Like, I'll maybe do like 6 a day. And Michelle's just like, bullshit. There's no way you're going to be doing.
Yeah.
So I did 6 the weekend before I launched. Okay. And I literally rotated T-shirts in different locations.
Okay.
And then I got to day 6 and I had no videos left.
Yeah.
And I was like, shit. And then basically I did them every day, just recording on the day.
Okay. What was the prep? Because like...
I would read their bio.
You're just a savant and remember all this stuff.
No, you know what? It's funny. This is where I think all my career in executive search helps because I would have to summarize candidates to clients for years.
Right. And tell a concise story.
Yeah. So I would read their bio maybe once, maybe twice, depending on the complexity.
Yeah.
And then I just would memorize it and I would just do it. Normally it would be one take. Some of them took 2 or 3 takes, but by the end I was like one take and it's
so
good
really
enough.
You're going to be a public speaker now.
It makes me deeply uncomfortable. What I realized this year is, because honestly, when I started putting those videos out, I thought, will anyone watch them? Is anyone going to care? Mm-hmm. And the first one was very stiff. You know, I was like sat and that first one took like 5 or 6 takes.
Yeah. And
I felt quite uncomfortable. And I thought, okay, I'm going to walk and talk because when I meet people, normally I meet them for walking coffee meetings.
That's your element.
It's kind of my thing. I want to move my body. What if I just try and record this while I'm walking? Yeah. And see if that helps me to.
Did you get a selfie stick?
No, I just had my little arms, you know. Some of my arm felt like they're going to fall off. Yeah. But so that was it. It was kind of like, let's see how it goes. And I think once I commit to doing something, I'm going to see it through. Mm-hmm. But what's nuts is that, we looked at it after. I think those videos, the 28 videos have been viewed. Mm-hmm. They've had like 200,000 impressions on LinkedIn. Okay. So each of the videos were getting 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 views, which I was absolutely mind blown.
So you sold some tickets? Sold
tickets. That was probably our biggest thing on attendance. Yeah. And I had so many random people come up to me and say, I've been watching your videos. And so I don't know what it was about them. Maybe it was just, it gave people the thought process why we select certain speakers and what's going to be interesting.
It's not often you see some of that methodology or some of the behind-the-scenes storytelling. So, I'm sure that's a big part of it.
I think what I've also realized is I've been very hesitant to kind of be on stage and to be too to me, the stars of the show are Holly and the speakers, and it's trying to create a platform for other people.
Yeah.
But I have realized this year that I think people are interested in the story of it, and they're interested in I think particularly they're quite interested in Michelle and I and the dynamic of a couple owning a business together and doing this. So I'm trying to push Michelle to do more, and she's
out
dead against it. She's like, you can do all the video stuff.
Well, you just get her in a quiet room like this, say nobody's watching, just have a conversation.
Yeah, it's funny because I think as you do more of this stuff, it obviously it gets easier. But the hardest video was the one I put out when I was kind of at breaking point.
Yeah. And
had my little cry. It was funny because I had so many people texting me that like hours after it went out, like, "Are you okay?" Basically, I think a few people were quite worried. But what I think, I was obviously a bit concerned about putting that out there, but I think I'm really glad I did, because you often see the shiny veneer, and I think most of the feedback I've had on the videos has been, it's just refreshing to see actually honesty and just someone being really properly open and uncomfortable in the tough moments.
Yeah. I guess so back to why you're here. I thought it'd be cool, while everything was somewhat still fresh, to just talk through the 2024 event.
Yeah, and thanks for inviting me back. And yeah, it's funny because we're recording this, what is it, Thursday today?
It is, yeah.
So we wrapped the event exactly a week last night.
So you've had a little bit of time to process, a little bit of time to get your strength back, maybe.
I feel a lot better, yeah. I was pretty sick during the 2 days of the event. You know, I had an IV drip of neocitrin for 2 days. And I think it was compounded by I wasn't getting much sleep. I was super sick. And then I had commitments that I had to, obviously, I couldn't drop them.
Yeah.
You know, it's not ideal doing like TV media interviews at 6 a.m. when you're not feeling sick.
No.
Oh, not feeling well.
No.
Yeah. So definitely I'm feeling probably 90% recovered.
Okay.
Had 3 or 4 good nights sleep.
So how did it go?
Do you know what? Beyond our wildest expectations, which I very rarely am fully happy with anything.
Okay.
This is the first time coming out of this where I'm like, I'm actually really happy and proud.
Okay.
And I don't think I've ever felt like that with the first 3.
And why is that? What was it about this year's event that just that hit those notes for you?
I think that it's the first time everything came together. So the first 3, we had issues with food, or there'd be a certain element that's like, I'm really disappointed in that particular thing.
Yeah.
I think this year the food was fantastic. The venue was amazing. I think we got the production largely right.
Yeah.
The speakers delivered. But then there's all these intangible things around, is everyone going to show up? What's the atmosphere going to be like? How are people going to use the space? Is there going to be this sense of community?
Yeah.
There was it sounds maybe slightly woo-woo, but there was like a magic in the room. Like that you felt through the whole 2 days. It was like, there was an electricity, there was an energy at the event.
Yep.
And I think people were having fun, but also learning. And we didn't know that was going to be the case.
I mean, you talked up the venue when we spoke previously, and I did not go there until the event. Had you been
before? What did you think of the venue?
It is world class.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Do you know when I was saying like
class.
10 out of 10? Do you know now what I mean about the attention to detail?
It's great. It's going to be such an asset for the city. Yeah. I've been to lots of places around the world. Like, that is absolutely top notch.
Yeah. I totally agree.
The space creates a feeling, a very good feeling, I would say, and like the mechanics of the place, moving around. There's beautiful escalators, and there's a sense of space.
Yeah.
All the rooms were great. I mean, they can be calibrated to the right size. Yeah. I think,
and it's an unusual layout, isn't it, for a convention space?
A bit, yeah.
I almost think that's a bit misleading to say it's a convention space, because it almost more feels like a luxury boutique hotel.
That's right.
That's
just at a bigger scale.
Host events, yeah.
So the main space lobby area, with the giant hearth.
Yeah, the exchange.
Which is, I mean, it's such a unique place where I think humans just have this aptitude to fire, even if it's not real.
Yeah.
But so I found myself, and it's a long 2 days, right? And you sometimes have to catch up on work or whatever. Yeah. And in past conferences, I'd feel inclined to go back to the office for a little bit and then come back. But actually, no, it's like I kind of want to be here and just kind of sit down on my laptop, do a little bit, and then go back and go and see another session. So I think it's not just the venue. It's obviously still the vibe that you guys were able to curate. So definitely commend you on that. But I think it's a tremendous
venue
asset.
Really helps.
It's a tremendous asset for the city.
It's funny. I was in there a couple of days ago for the economic development report to the community, and I had this mixed feeling of PTSD going back in so soon. But I think the other thing probably that people might not realize is none of that infrastructure is there. So the way we laid it out is not the normal way that you would see. And it sounds very simplistic to say this, but people probably don't realize that we bring in all the rigging, the lights, the stage. We build everything.
Yes.
It's an empty ballroom for the rest of the time. So sometimes I think I wouldn't have known that when I previously went to major events before I was doing this. Just the level of equipment and also the amount of people involved to build something like that. So to put some numbers around this, we got in there at Saturday morning at like 6 a.m. We had 100 people building the stages for 3 full days.
Yeah.
And putting the lights in, and there were hundreds of boxes for all the equipment that came in. And then they tear it apart in 24 hours. And it's funny, when they come in, we were doing the photos at the end on the stage. They're already starting to rip apart the stage while we're doing photos. And Michelle and I every year are going, we cannot watch this.
Yeah.
We need to actually leave because it's too soul destroying to see it all get taken apart.
So what are some of the highlights that have really stood forward as like, I'm going to think back on this event and these are the 3 or 4 things that I'm going to think of immediately?
Well, the first thing I'd say, and this might surprise people, is I actually don't see a lot of the event. So people might be surprised by that.
That doesn't surprise me because I can see you running around. There's still a lot of coordinating to do, right?
I would say morning of day one, we were still problem solving a lot of things.
Yeah.
Like funny things that you would never ever expect, like the fire alarm, like they started tarring the roof next door of the Big Four. Yeah. We had to stop them doing that. We had someone drilling between floors. So I'm getting texts and phone calls, not necessarily that I'm solving the problems, but more just there's an anxiety in that first day of, is it going to be a fuck up or is it going to go okay? Yeah. And then I'll try and catch some of the sessions, but it might sound also a bit strange, but I find it hard to watch it because I'm too close to it. It's too personal for me. So there will be points where I literally go and hide over the 2 days because I emotionally can't.
I have so much skin in the game.
I have so much skin in the game. And probably my biggest fear is sat next to someone and they're like, don't have any idea who I am. And they say, what a piece of shit this event is. Yeah. And I just think emotionally I'm not. So it sounds weird.
Well, I'll flip the question then. Based on your feedback from people you know and trust, what are their highlights?
Well, I will. So actually, I will. So that's one piece. Yeah. But I saw more of the event than I've ever seen, particularly on day 2. Day 2, I actually watched a lot on the main stage. So there's a few things that for me really stood out. We were freaking out about the hologram with Yuval because whenever you're using hologram, there's a million things that can go wrong.
Yep.
And getting the lighting right and getting the feed right and even little things like I'd got our head of production to call the team in California where Yuval was and said every 10 seconds or 15 seconds when Yuval's answering the question, can you ask him to turn his head towards the audience so that it looks like he's engaging with the audience, but tell him not to do it too much because it would be weird. So it's these little things that you learn that we wouldn't have known coming out of, we learned that from the first time we used the holograms.
Right.
So I think Yuval was a standout.
Yep.
Because that's probably the most fun I've seen him have in an interview and the most levity he's brought to conversation.
Yeah.
And I think that's incredible credit to Holly that she was able to do that, especially via
virtually,
via hologram where they just see a screen each.
Yeah.
So that would be the first one. I think Sanna and Jacinda were incredible. And you're always worried when you bring in talent like that there's big expectations, and are those individuals going to meet or exceed the expectations?
And it's good that they're in this kind of interesting part of their careers where they're still close enough to it. It has been so far gone since they were in office, but then they're far enough away that they can actually share some opinions here and there.
Yeah, and we did that deliberately. So we're not keen on bringing current politicians to the stage because let's be honest, they can't say anything that's going to be interesting.
No.
So I think we've tried to, with Sanna and Jacinda, we went, okay, we think they're going to be able to comment on this in a really meaningful way. And I thought they're both really open.
Yeah.
I thought the geopolitics session with Sanna and Jeff and Bruno was, for me, probably the best panel of the whole summit.
Yeah.
Or one of. And that was a surprise because you never know. They hadn't met before.
You don't know
the dynamic between them.
No.
And there was chemistry there, but they had enough difference of opinion that there was a nice tension to that session.
Yeah.
And then probably the more personal one would have been, when we had that final panel and I'm sat in the audience, I'm probably 20 rows back and I'm looking forward and I can see my kids at the front with all their friends from our neighborhood and their parents. There were about 6 little kids listening to Jacinda and they sat there for 2 hours watching the last 2 sessions. That was like really special because this is the first year where the kids really, or certainly my kids, really understood it.
Yeah.
And Anna, our eldest, ran backstage the minute I got off stage and she burst into tears and said to me, "I'm so proud of you, Mummy." And that was emotional because
that's cool.
I think it's the first time she's really understood it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, that was a lot of waffling, but that's for me the top of mind, some things that stand out.
No, that's great. And then I guess what's next? So it went off without a hitch. Perfect conference.
Maybe. Close. Not perfect. It's definitely not perfect.
I don't think there's never a perfect event.
No.
And then in the past, you've had breaks between events, but now for sure you've got the 2025 dates booked. Yep. Do you have 26 as well?
We have provisional 26, 27, and 28.
Okay. And so, I guess in the past, I know we've talked about where you feel like you kind of need a bit of space in between events. But I think you can argue now that there's enough going on in the space that an annual event is actually will work. Is that your view still, or
Yeah, that's my view. I mean, I think that there's a few aspects to this. So I think in the previous years we lost momentum. So we'd do the event, we wouldn't even announce dates. The team would disappear for 6 months. And I would always get really bad post-event blues because this does take over our lives for large periods.
Yeah.
It's all encompassing. And so part of it was, okay, doing it annual means we actually have to professionalize this and actually have a full-time team. Mm-hmm. I think it's more financially sustainable. I think that for our big partners, they're keener on it as well. It's easier for them to plan with budget cycles. My fear was always that, could we keep it fresh?
Yeah.
So to me, that the number one focus at the moment is, what are we going to do that improves this further?
Yeah.
But this is probably the first one we're coming out of where it's not like we're reinventing everything. I think largely we know how the venue now works.
Yep.
We know how people are going to use the space. So I think you'll come next year, you're going to see certain elements that are more tweaks.
But not reinvention every time, yeah.
But we'll look at every facet, right? So we have a debrief tomorrow about media and PR, and we'll spend 2 hours going through every element. We'll do the same for volunteering. Every facet of the event we'll look at with a kind of fine-tooth comb. Mm-hmm. And I think the philosophy is that everything can be improved on.
Yep.
Basically, that's how we approach it.
I thought the tracks worked well.
That's great to hear.
Yeah. So explain, I guess the thinking behind them, and then how those came to be.
I think it was a risk going from 2 content tracks to 4 because you're splitting your audience. Probably our biggest concern was, would we lose the energy in the room? And the absolute worst scenario is that you have people on stage and there's 20 people in the room.
Yeah.
and there's no atmosphere. It's a disservice to the speakers.
Yeah.
So we were freaking out. Even the night before going, we sold 2,800 tickets.
Yeah.
Was that going to feel like the event was empty?
Yeah.
And you're going, we had no idea because we'd never used the space.
Yeah.
And I think we hit a nice level of busyness.
Yeah.
But
I was surprised by the other stages, quite honestly, in those rooms. And I thought they were...
by the design or the sizing?
No, just that they were full.
Yeah.
There was a nice atmosphere
really
to them. It creates a different kind of intimacy. So I think that was great to see.
Well, that was Michelle's doing because at the old venue we used Rotary House, which was at roughly 160 people.
I think there's probably also something about the old venue where, compared to the new, if you're moving between spaces in the new, you're still coming back to a central point. Like
exactly.
It is a hub and spoke, whereas in the other venue you're in the parking lot and then going
exactly.
to
It was a bit weird, right?
Yeah.
And with Rotary House, people loved the space because it was quite intimate, and we went, okay, how do we bring this intimacy?
Mm-hmm.
Because again, where we did the breakouts, that's normally just a cavernous ballroom.
Yeah.
So when we walked in that room for the first time, we went, fuck, how are we going to do this? Because this has no atmosphere. It's super dark. So we got to bring intimacy to this space. So how do we lower the ceiling heights?
Mm-hmm.
How do we create the right lighting? How do we create the right design and aesthetic? And I think largely we were pretty successful.
Yeah, I agree.
In how we did that. And getting the number of seats right as well. We only made a final decision on the seat count the night before the summit.
Jeez.
So, Michelle and I last minute adjusted the seats and took out 30 seats from this space and decided to allocate them to a different area.
Yeah. And so I guess the tracks could definitely change what those concepts are from year to year.
Yeah.
Which, again, there's enough going on in the space.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, did you know that AI and data centers require a lot of energy?
I didn't. I learned that. That was like one of the huge threads, wasn't it? The whole...
Just nonstop. And it's hilarious because a year ago, it wasn't on anybody's radar.
Yeah.
Nobody.
Yeah.
Well,
and it was, I think, what was also kind of interesting this year to have the number 2 globally for Microsoft Data Center for their power procurement. And so it's not just people commenting on this. We had some of the top people in the world involved in this space, obviously, who are landing that message.
Mm-hmm.
It might sound silly. I never realized. I knew that data centers would have redundancy and backups.
Yeah.
I actually never realized that if you had a 100 megawatt data center, you need 100 megawatts of batteries and 100 megawatts of diesel generators as backup. I naively thought, you'd probably have 50.
It's not always the way I understand it, it's not always the batteries, but definitely the diesel generators.
Yeah, so this is something Jim from Microsoft said, and I absolutely blew my mind.
Yeah.
That
there's a lot of redundancy.
You'd have 100% redundancy on the most critical data center infrastructure.
So do you already have some ideas for 25?
We do. So, back to kind of what's next.
Yeah.
Obviously, one of the pieces is doing the debriefs and running through what can we do better, what worked, what didn't work. But we're already starting to make speaker lists for next year. So,
and I think we were talking about this before too, in that having dates at least a couple of years ahead, a lot of the speakers, the caliber speaker that you want to attract to the event,
year out,
they're at least a year out, sometimes more.
Yeah.
So you actually need those dates and actually to secure the best guests.
100%. And what you also need is a track record, because you're not going to go and, you and I could start tomorrow and go, right, let's go and book Michelle Obama. We're probably going to have a hard time doing that with no track record.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that we'll track about 1,000 speakers, believe it or not, and we'll look at, okay, who's interesting? Do we like them? Some of these folks we've approached 3, 4, 5 times. I mean, Yuval, I think we did approach 4 or 5 times. And then eventually it happens and the timing's right. So we've got some ideas already on who we think would be great headliners for 25. So that would be one of the big pieces. But one of the other massive factors is entering into all the discussions with the major partners. So some of the partners we need to renew. Some of the partners are in the middle of multi-year contracts. Some of the partners, sometimes we have to switch out partners because we go, okay, maybe there's not quite the alignment. So that's really one of my big focuses over the next couple of months is how do we improve the commercial partnerships so that we can keep improving the product and investing in the summit.
And then any plans for, I guess, the continuity of the brand in between events?
Yeah, so this is a question that I think always comes up. Are we going to do other things?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not. We 100% going to do other things at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Whether we do that in the next year or whether we do one more year, we're getting asked, can we build a trade show attached to this? Can we do a dinner series? Can we run some smaller summits in Vancouver and Toronto?
Yeah.
I think that we always come back to, does it feed the bigger mission of what we're trying to do?
Mm-hmm.
And are we excited about it?
Yeah.
So if it doesn't fit those two criteria, we're not going to do it. So, and I think I'm getting better at saying no to things as well.
What was the composition of the attendees this year compared to previous years? Like, was it mostly Calgarian or lots of people traveling? Did it change? Like, yeah.
Yeah, we haven't done like the deep dive yet on the breakdown, but
I guess one thing quite high gender equity, right? Like
it was about 50-50. We've never had that before.
Yeah.
So we did know that. Which is pretty
striking in an energy conference.
Well, you felt it, I think, in the room, didn't you?
Yeah.
It really, and the other thing I couldn't believe was the amount of young people. So there were 700 young professionals and leaders under the age of 30.
Yeah.
And you felt it. There was a multi-generational component.
Yeah.
I would hazard a guess that we're probably 60% in market, 40% out of market.
Yeah.
But that's another thing we're trying to improve for next year is I think the international people bring such an interesting dynamic to the event and just broaden the thinking. But we've done this the hard way where it's been word of mouth. It's not been through, we're not bombarding people in the UK or Norway with ads.
Yeah.
And this year felt different as well. The response this year has been different to prior years. Like the reaction on social media has been utterly insane. Like I've never seen anything like it since we started this.
And you don't even have all the videos up yet, which I think you're planning to do, right?
We just started the first one this morning.
Okay.
So I think last count we've had 1,000 testimonials on LinkedIn in the last 5 days.
Yeah.
And what is blowing our minds is people are writing like essays and articles and there's 7, 8, 9 paragraph posts about their experience. And it's overwhelming. And so some of the messages we've been receiving and emails, it's like deeply emotionally impacted people, which is, it's been incredible to see that response.
Fantastic. Yeah. Anything else on your mind?
I don't think so. It's nice to get some of this off my chest. You know, it's probably the first day I've woken up and gone, I feel ready to talk about it.
Yeah.
You know, it's when Holly disappears and family go and disappear this weekend and you start to, there is a bit of almost the post-event blues that kind of set in. Because part of it's also the team, you're working in such an intense way for months on end.
Yeah.
And the team's truly like family. And then it just dissipates and everyone kind of disappears into the wind.
Yeah.
But this year's different because we've had to go, right, let's go and regroup. And the other thing that I've been trying to respond to is I'm getting people asking me to come and speak at different things and attend various things. And so weirdly, probably the next 6 weeks, I've got loads of...
Thought leadership.
Oh, God, I hate that fucking word. Isn't it like... And personal brand, you know, I just got sent something on LinkedIn this morning, like how to build your personal brand through video. And it's cringy, isn't it? Like, let's be honest. So I think that I've never been a fan of that kind of stuff, but I'm just going to truly be myself. And I think we've got to do that with the summit as well.
It's how your ideas get out there into the world.
Yeah, and I think there's too much screening, isn't there, in some ways? Although Yuval argued the opposite of this, didn't he? He said, we've got too much authentic leadership. We should be putting up a wall before people just spew their conscious stream of thoughts.
Yeah, I think you could interpret that in a couple of different ways. But.
Yeah. And what about for you? Is there anything that you go... I mean, one thing I'll say is, I mean, you've played such an integral role in this because some of the most important people and speakers and ideas have been through you messaging me and saying, hey, this person you need to check out. Like Bruno is an amazing example of that, but pieces of content. And that's also something that people don't realize is yourself, and there's probably 10 other people that I really deeply trust when it comes to the content.
Yeah.
And what should we be discussing? And that's also something that is special about this, because there's a group of people who are just emotionally connected to the journey of this. And to me, it's like a collective thing where we've all helped to kind of bring this to life. So I want to give you a shout out and say thank you so much for that. You support this since the early days when there was nothing, right? It was just an idea. And it
was a good idea, though.
I think it was an okay idea that's been molded and shaped.
Yeah.
But that's the other thing that's amazing about it is there's so many people so deeply passionate. And there is a moment where you go, shit, this has grown a lot. And it's pretty cool to see where it had quite humble beginnings. And it's cool to see the momentum.
I still have ideas.
Hit me up.
We'll talk about them. I still think one of the great things about this year's event and past events is it's not strictly 100% energy content.
It's very wide, isn't it?
That's right. By the end of a day of just strictly energy content, you're ready to be somewhere else.
Yeah.
And whatever this percentage is that you've managed to kind of curate, whether it's 70-30 or whatever it looks like.
Maybe even less 50. Than that. It's probably 50-50.
I mean, the way you can kind of choose your own adventure, you can kind of turn it into 50-50. And really, like, you're only going to get a handful of good ideas out of a day anyway.
Yeah.
And so you actually need disparate domains kind of coming together, and the opportunity to listen to different authors or different speakers or listen to some music or all these different experiences. So, but yes, I have ideas.
I love it. And so, what we'll do is we'll go for our usual walks and start to kind of kick those around. And, I think some of the other pieces are, energy transition is not just an energy challenge. So a lot of the topics this year were around humanity and how we think and our values and culture. And one of the other things that surprised me was what this reminded me of is when you put people in a room together and you create the right environment, even if we have differences in opinion, there's a magic that you can create there where you actually get people to open up their thinking and perspectives and converse. And it was so respectful, even though there were a lot of different views. The summit and the way people were engaging was just so respectful.
Yep.
And I think in this day and age, that's something that is unusual. Because normally people just want to throw mud and slag each other off. So that was another thing that maybe surprised us, was just the way people were interacting, the quality of the interactions.
Fully agree.
Yeah, it was awesome. So thank you for your support. Thank you for letting me get this off my chest. I'll probably sleep better tonight after.
Oh, great.
Yeah. Unloading all this stuff. And it's awesome to obviously be back on and talk about this.
Great. Thanks. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Energy Untold. Energy Untold is produced by Shortline Creative and recorded at GBE Energy. Art is curated with the assistance of Norberg Hall. For more information on the show, visit energyuntold.com. We would love your feedback. Send us a message at hello@energyuntold.com. Thank you again, and until next time, I am Corey Paddock.